Welcome to the TUFA Project. I'm Aaron, and today we're going to learn how to calculate ED visits from medical claims data. So, why is it so difficult to calculate ED visits from medical claims data? Well, there's really three main problems going on here. The first problem is, like a lot of things with claims data, there's no single field or column or data element that says, "Hey, this claim was an ED visit." Instead, what happens is there's lots of esoteric code sets like HCPCS codes, revenue center codes, place of service codes, and you have to use these different fields and the different codes within them to try to suss out if the claim was related to an ED visit or not. So that's the first problem. The second problem is there basically every single ED visit will generate multiple claims. Often it'll generate a single visit will generate one professional claim from the physician component and an institutional claim from the facility component, but sometimes more than that. And in order to get an accurate count of how many ED visits are happening, you've got to combine these claims, and that can be challenging. The third issue is there's no like a lot of things in healthcare analytics. There's no objectively right answer for how to do this from a method standpoint. There's actually more than one method, and the result that you get can vary dramatically depending on the method that you use. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to really dig into the first problem, which is how do we use these different fields or codes to even identify claims that are related to ED visits. And then in subsequent videos, we're going to look at how to merge ED claims into a single visit, and then ultimately look at some sensitivity analysis of different methods and how those methods lead to different results. You'll start to see a little bit of that here as we go through some examples. So just to start off with, though, remember there's two types of medical claims. First, there's professional claims. These are typically billed by physicians. They're paid at the claim line level, so every claim will be made up of multiple lines, and the paid amount, the amount that's paid, will be derived from the line level. And there's two key fields that are used for ED visits or to identify ED visits, and that's the place of service code field and HCPCS codes. On institutional claims, remember these are billed by facilities. They're paid typically at the header level, although there's some variation there. In the main fields we're going to look at are revenue center codes and HCPCS codes. And remember above, before we even get into any of this stuff, you have to identify and resolve claim adjustments, denials, and reversals in your claims data set. Otherwise, you're going to get the wrong answer in all likelihood. So we've got other documentation and content on how to do that on the tufaproject.com. So let's dig into professional claims and start with place of service codes. If you're not familiar, there's 53 distinct place of service codes. These are required for billing. Every claim line should have one and only one place of service code. And they look like this. These are different place of service codes and their associated descriptions. And these are statistics. All the statistics that I'm going to show you are from the Medicare standard analytic files, the limited data set, which is a 5% sample of fee-for-service claims nationally. And so you can see far and away the most common place of service code is 11 for office visit. And that's about 50% of all claim lines. We're looking at counts and percentages of claim lines here as opposed to unique claims. And you can see about just under 3% of claim lines use place of service code 23 for emergency room. So another thing to be aware of with professional claims and place of service codes is some payers make up their own place of service codes. And we see this happen probably with about 5% of claims data sets where, a payer will have a claims adjudication process. The exhaust of that process will be an analytics claims data set, and they will do additional transformation to make up kind of a place of service code concept that is across both professional claims and institutional claims. So you'll know they're doing this if you see institutional claims that have a place of service code. Place of service is not a field on institutional claims. So if you see institutional claims that have a place of service code, you'll know that's happening. So this is something to just be aware of. This doesn't really happen with HCPCS codes. Those are more left alone to what you see on the actual come across on the actual bill and claim. So let's dig into those HCPCS codes. Just a reminder, there's really two levels. Level 1 HCPCS codes are CPT codes. These are maintained by the AMA. Level 2 are supplemental codes. These are maintained by CMS to kind of cover all sorts of stuff that the AMA codes don't cover. Every professional claim line should have one and only one HCPCS code. This is the contractually allowed amount that's paid on the claim is tied to this code. So generally speaking, these codes, the data, this is some of the best data on professional claims is the HCPCS code. Some of the most reliable data on a professional claim is the HCPCS code. So what HCPCS codes do we care about for ED visits? Well, from level 1 codes, there's ED evaluation and management, or E&M codes. These are 9928X, where X is 1 through 5. But then there's also critical care codes. Sometimes the cases that come into the ED are just insane, and it's appropriate to bill at a higher level to account for that higher intensity and resource utilization. So people bill 9929X. On the HCPCS level 2 side, there's a set of codes G038X, where X is 0 through 4. These are only on institutional claims, though, so you won't see these on professional claims. Medicare came up with these a few years ago to help with their outpatient prospective payment system. So you won't actually see these a lot of any of the codes, and we'll look at these in a second, but the ED evaluation management codes are the ones we really want to pay attention to here. And so if we look at those codes, let's just look at the count of claim lines that we see in the Medicare claims data across these different evaluation and management HCPCS codes. And we can look at the counts when we allow any place of service code, so we don't care what the place of service code is, or when we require the place of service equals 23. And the interesting thing here is like 99.9+% of these codes, the place of service code is always 23 when we see these codes. So like very reliably, like claim lines where you see this happening, that's stuff that's happening in the ED. On the other hand, when we look at those critical care codes, 992291 and 292, only about 30% of those codes have a place of service code equal to 23, and that makes sense. These codes are being used all over in the ICU and in other places. So when we look at we drill into those 9928X and we compare the utilization of those codes to just overall utilization of the place of service codes, when it's equal to 23, what does that look like? And the interesting thing here is almost every time, like we saw previously, almost universally every time there's a 9928X, there's also a place of service code 23, but there's also all sorts of other times when the claim line will have a place of service code equal to 23, but some other HCPCS code. And we did some analysis and looked through this, and in the Medicare claims, and you'll see lots of, like, some of the most common ones are CT scans and other tons of like radiology type stuff. And so you're like, okay, that's probably stuff that is happening in the ED. But is it always the case that those could just be other lines on the claim, right? You could have one line on the claim be place of service code 23 and 9928 something, and then other lines on the claim for the other services, right? And that's probably fine. But to what extent do you have claims where you have a bunch of place of service codes equal to 23, but no line on the claim is equal to 9928X? And that's what we're going to look at here. We're basically, in this query, we say, give us all the unique claim IDs. So now we're not looking at lines, we're looking at whole claims. Give us all the claims that have at least one line with 9928X. And then down here, and it turns out in the data set, that's just under 1.5 million unique claims. And then in the next query, give us all the unique claims that have at least one line where place of service code is equal to 23. And that turns out to be a lot more. And then let's just look at the overlap. Let's say, how many times do we have a claim ID that has from this place of service code test, if you will, that where that claim ID does not have a 9928X, and that's happening a lot. And so this is really, you know, when we choose the method for how we identify professional claims, you know, there's like a more liberal approach, right, where we can say, you know what, let's consider place of service code equal 23 good, or let's consider any time there's a HCPCS code good. In the Medicare claims data, that results in a little over 3.6 million unique claims. Or we can take a much more conservative approach. We can say, you know what, the billing guidelines say if they're in the ED visit, they should have a 9928X. And so we're going to only, and the HCPCS codes are the most reliable information in a claims data set. So we're only going to rely on those codes. And so this could be you know, this is a place where obviously the tagging of the claims is different. We'll have to see you know, downstream in the process, when after we merge claims into visits, if this change actually propagates through and leads to a dramatically different answer. But at face value, these are two very different answers. Now, on the other hand, what you could do to kind of move that conservative definition toward the liberal definition is you could add in those critical care codes, 9929X, with the requirement that place of service is 23 on those codes. So you could start with your conservative definition and then add that critical care component to kind of inch it toward the liberal definition. But as we saw in some of the earlier statistics, it's not going to get you all the way to 3.6 million. So this is a big difference. So now let's take a look at institutional claims. The good news around institutional claims, they're way easier. Basically, revenue center codes or revenue codes, which indicate services delivered by the facility. Basically, they tell the full story. We're going to look for revenue codes between 0450 and 0459 and also 0981. These things indicate the patient was in the emergency department. And if we look at the distribution of these codes, and again, we're looking at claim lines, you can, but just look at the incidents here, like the counts. 0450 is almost the entire story. And then 0981 gets you all the way to 99%. And then, you know, you kind of everything else makes up the rest. And so that's pretty straightforward. If we do a Venn diagram comparison, we can see, you know, HCPCS codes, and we actually throw the G038X in here as well. There's a very small amount of these that do not have a corresponding revenue code. And so the story, you know, we can basically the whole story here is around revenue codes, and and there's kind of only one way to really do this. So that's how you use medical claims. That's how you identify ED visits and medical claims. And next up, we're going to merge claims into visits, or what we call encounters.